The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., marked urgent and confidential. Sarah Mitchell sat in her corner office on the 32nd floor, coffee growing cold as she read the words that would shatter her world. Immediate termination due to financial irregularities in client accounts. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the attached audit report. $50,000 missing from the Henderson campaign, $37,000 from Morrison Industries, all traced back to her access codes, her digital signature, her authorization. The numbers swam before her eyes as security guards appeared at her door with a cardboard box. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered to HR Director Janet Mills, who couldn't meet her eyes. "I would never. The evidence is conclusive, Sarah. I'm sorry." That evening, Sarah sat in her empty apartment, staring at Marcus's note propped against the coffee maker. "Had to leave town for a family emergency. Back soon. Love you." The family emergency, she would later learn, was liquidating their joint accounts. The love was transferring her grandmother's inheritance, money she'd foolishly moved to their shared investment portfolio just months before, to an offshore account. The back soon was a lie wrapped in 3 years of lies. Her phone buzzed constantly. Friends, colleagues, even her own sister calling to ask if the rumors were true. Had she really been stealing from clients? Was she having a breakdown? Marcus had been so worried about her lately, they said. He'd confided his concerns about her erratic behavior, her drinking, her paranoid accusations about his faithfulness. Each call was a fresh wound. Sarah realized with growing horror that Marcus hadn't just stolen her money, he'd been systematically poisoning everyone against her for months, laying groundwork for this moment. When her best friend Emma suggested she get help and maybe stay away from social events until things blew over, Sarah understood the true scope of his betrayal. The documents arrived by courier the next day, legal papers she'd signed without reading, trusting Marcus's explanations about investment opportunities and tax benefits. Her signature on loan guarantees, business partnerships, liability agreements, all making her responsible for debts she never knew existed. Debts that now belonged to a man who had vanished like smoke. Sarah sat on her kitchen floor, surrounded by evidence of her own destruction, and felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had shattered when she realized the man she'd planned to marry had orchestrated her downfall with surgical precision. This was deeper. This was the sound of her faith in justice, in fairness, in the basic goodness of people, crumbling to dust. Marcus had played a long game, and she had been the perfect mark, successful, trusting, so in love that she'd handed him the tools of her own destruction. Now she faced criminal charges, financial ruin, and social exile, while he enjoyed her inheritance on some tropical beach. The woman who had once believed in playing by the rules realized the rules had never applied to men like Marcus Webb. 3 sleepless nights later, Sarah sat surrounded by printed emails, bank statements, and legal documents, mapping Marcus's deception like a detective hunting a serial killer. The pattern emerged slowly, then all at once. The lawyer she'd consulted delivered the verdict with practiced sympathy. He covered his tracks well. Proving coercion will be nearly impossible, and the statute of limitations on some of these financial instruments has already passed. I'm sorry, but pursuing this legally would cost more than you'd likely recover. That's when Sarah began her real investigation. Social media searches led to Marcus's previous relationships. A LinkedIn message to his ex-girlfriend Rebecca Chen yielded a 2-hour phone call that left Sarah nauseous and furious. "He did the exact same thing to me 3 years ago," Rebecca whispered, her voice still raw with pain. "Cleaned out my savings, destroyed my credit, then vanished. My friends all thought I was having a breakdown because he'd convinced them I was mentally unstable." 2 more women, same pattern. Same carefully orchestrated destruction, followed by Marcus reinventing himself in a new city with a new name variation. Mark Wells, Marcus William, Mark Weber, but always the same devastatingly charming sociopath. "The police said it was a civil matter," Rebecca continued. "He's smart enough to stay just inside the legal lines." Sarah's blood turned to ice when Rebecca mentioned seeing Marcus's engagement announcement on Facebook. "To some girl named Jessica in Denver. I wanted to warn her, but who would believe me?" That night, Sarah stared at Jessica Morrison's social media profile. 26 years old, recently promoted to regional sales manager, posting pictures of her new engagement ring with hearts and wedding planning hashtags. In the comments, friends gushed about how lucky she was to find such a devoted fiancé who was so interested in her career success and financial planning. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through photos of Marcus, now calling himself Mark Wells, looking exactly as he had when he'd first swept her off her feet. The same confident smile, the same expensive suit, the same predatory gleam disguised as love. The justice system had failed her, society had failed her, but she wouldn't fail Jessica. Sarah opened a new browser window and began creating her first fake social media account. If Marcus wanted to play games, she'd show him what a real strategist could do. Sarah's apartment transformed into a war room. She'd taken a leave of absence from job hunting, using her remaining savings to fund what she now thought of as Project Justice. 3 monitors displayed different social media accounts: Jennifer Walsh, a Denver local interested in hiking; Michael Torres, a financial consultant; and Amanda Price, a concerned citizen with strong opinions about fraud prevention. Through Jennifer, she befriended Jessica's co-workers and college friends, slowly integrating herself into their social circle. Through Michael, she connected with Marcus's new professional network at Morrison Financial, where he'd landed a position as a senior investment advisor. Amanda became her voice for more direct action. The evidence gathering was meticulous. Sarah screenshot every social media post, saved every public document, cross-referenced every story Marcus told Jessica with the lies he'd told her. She documented his pattern: the rapid romantic escalation, the concern about his fiancé's spending habits, the helpful suggestions about optimizing finances through joint accounts. Her first strike was surgical. A simple email to Morrison Financial's compliance department: thought you should know that your new hire Mark Wells was terminated from his last position under suspicious circumstances. Might want to verify his references. She attached copies of news articles about the investigation at her former company, carefully redacted to highlight the financial irregularities without mentioning her own involvement. Rebecca Chen became her most valuable ally. Together they contacted Marcus's other victims, 5 women across 4 states, all with eerily similar stories. Sarah proposed a coordinated information campaign. Each woman would reach out to someone in Marcus's current circle, sharing their story as a concerned warning. The seeds of doubt sprouted quickly. Jessica's best friend received a heartfelt message from Lisa Martinez, Marcus's victim from Portland. "I know this sounds crazy, but I had to reach out. I saw your friend's engagement photos and I think she's in danger. This man destroyed my life." Marcus's new boss heard from Rebecca during a networking event. "Mark Wells, oh my God, please tell me you did a thorough background check. I used to work with him and there were serious concerns about his ethics." Sarah watched the psychological pressure build through her digital perches. Jessica began asking more questions about Marcus's past. His colleagues started viewing him with subtle suspicion. The comfort of his new identity began fraying at the edges. But Sarah's masterpiece was Amanda Price's blog post, "Protecting Yourself from Financial Predators: Red Flags Every Woman Should Know." She detailed Marcus's exact methodology without naming him, then shared it in every Denver women's group, financial literacy forum, and relationship advice community she could find. Within weeks, Jessica's friends were forwarding her the article with messages like, "This reminded me of some things Mark has said. Just want to make sure you're being careful with your finances." The turning point came when Marcus posted a paranoid rant on his private Facebook account about jealous exes spreading lies and people who can't accept that others have moved on. Sarah, watching through Jennifer Walsh's friendship with Jessica's roommate, saw the first crack in his facade. Marcus knew someone was hunting him. He just didn't know it was his most dangerous prey, finally learning to bite back. The unraveling accelerated like a controlled demolition. Sarah watched through her network of digital eyes as Marcus's carefully constructed world collapsed floor by floor. It started with the drinking. Jessica's Instagram stories, once filled with romantic dinner dates, now showed Marcus with increasingly glassy eyes and defensive postures. Through Jennifer Walsh's friendship with Jessica's roommate, Sarah learned about the late-night arguments, the accusations that Jessica was conspiring against him, the empty bottles Marcus tried to hide. "He's convinced everyone is out to get him," Jessica confided to her roommate during a conversation Sarah recorded through a baby monitor app Jennifer had recommended for home security. He checks my phone, questions every conversation I have. Yesterday he accused me of working with his ex-girlfriends to sabotage his career. Sarah felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt, but she pushed it aside. Marcus had made his choices. She was simply accelerating the consequences. Her intelligence network reported Marcus's deteriorating performance at work. He'd become increasingly erratic, missing meetings, snapping at colleagues, filing paranoid complaints about office sabotage. When Morrison Financial's HR director called Sarah's manufactured reference a burner phone with Rebecca Chen providing character testimony, Marcus's fate was sealed. The final blow came when Sarah abandoned subtlety entirely. Using Amanda Price's blog platform, she published the Mark Wells Files, a Denver woman's guide to avoiding financial predators. This time she named names, photos, documentation, a complete dossier of Marcus's criminal pattern across 5 states, presented as a public service announcement. Within hours, the post had been shared in every Denver social media group. Jessica's friends flooded her with messages. Marcus's photo circulated with warnings to stay away from this man. His LinkedIn profile became a battlefield of professional destruction as former colleagues and new acquaintances connected the dots. Sarah watched the live feed of Morrison Financial's parking lot through traffic cameras as Marcus stumbled out of the building, carrying a cardboard box not unlike the one she'd carried from her own office months earlier. The poetic justice should have felt satisfying. Instead, she felt hollow. Jessica left him that weekend. Sarah tracked her through social media as she moved back in with her parents, posting messages about betrayal and narrow escapes in gratitude for friends who opened her eyes. Another life saved, another woman spared Marcus's particular brand of destruction. But Marcus didn't disappear this time. Sarah's monitoring systems caught him in increasingly disturbing behavior. He was drunk, posting on social media at all hours, rambling about persecution and revenge. Security footage from his apartment building showed him stumbling through hallways, talking to himself, looking gaunt and wild-eyed. The breaking point came when Sarah watched him through a coffee shop security camera, sitting alone at a corner table, nursing the same cold coffee for 3 hours while staring at his laptop screen. His hands shook as he typed what appeared to be the same message over and over, deleting and retyping, his face a mask of defeat and rage. Later that night, she intercepted his emails. His password security had deteriorated along with everything else, and found drafts of suicide notes mixed with incoherent plans for revenge against the conspiracy destroying innocent men. Sarah stared at her monitors, surrounded by the evidence of her successful campaign, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with her apartment's temperature. She'd wanted justice, wanted Marcus to face consequences for his crimes. She hadn't wanted to watch a human being disintegrate in real time. For the first time since beginning her mission, Sarah wondered if there was a difference between justice and cruelty and which side of that line she was standing on. The call came from Rebecca Chen at 6:23 a.m. on a Thursday. Sarah answered on the first ring, already sensing catastrophe in the early hour. "He's dead," Rebecca whispered. Marcus, it was on the Denver news. Car accident. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the kitchen floor. Through her laptop screen, she watched the news footage: a BMW wrapped around an oak tree on Highway 36, emergency lights painting the pre-dawn darkness in harsh reds and blues. The reporter's voice seemed to come from underwater. The driver, identified as 34-year-old Mark Wells, was pronounced dead at the scene. Alcohol was a contributing factor. The accident reconstruction told a story Sarah could read like a book she'd written herself. Marcus had been driving 90 miles per hour in a 45 zone. No skid marks before impact. His phone showed he'd been scrolling through the Mark Wells Files blog post moments before the crash, his final Google search reading, "How to make them pay for destroying innocent man." The official ruling was accidental death, but Sarah knew better. She'd pushed him to this ledge, and some dark part of her had wanted him to jump. The victory tasted like ash. St. Matthew's Catholic Church overflowed with mourners who remembered Marcus as he'd wanted to be remembered. Charming, successful, beloved. Sarah sat in the back pew, having driven to Denver against every instinct of self-preservation. She owed him this much to face what she'd done. Marcus's mother spotted her first. Elena Wells's eyes widened with recognition and rage. Soon whispers rippled through the congregation like poison in water. "That's her, the one from the blog. She destroyed him." During the viewing, Marcus's brother Jason approached Sarah with barely contained fury. "I hope you're satisfied," he hissed. "My brother made mistakes, but he didn't deserve to die for them." You killed him as surely as if you'd been behind the wheel. The accusations came in waves. Former colleagues who'd once liked Marcus blamed Sarah for his professional destruction. Jessica's friends, despite knowing what Marcus had tried to do to her, whispered that Sarah had gone too far. Even Rebecca, calling from Portland, seemed to question whether their crusade had been worth a human life. "We wanted him stopped," Rebecca said during their tense phone call. Not dead. Sarah sat alone in that church pew, surrounded by hundreds of people who hated her, carrying the weight of a man's destruction on her shoulders. She'd wanted Marcus to face consequences for his crimes. She'd gotten her wish in the cruelest way possible. The hollow victory was complete, and it felt exactly like defeat. Father Rodriguez approached the pulpit with measured steps, his weathered hands carrying a manila envelope alongside his prepared eulogy. The elderly priest's eyes swept across the congregation before settling on Sarah for a moment longer than the rest. "We gather today not just to mourn Mark Wells, but to confront the truth about his life and death," he began, his voice carrying the authority of 4 decades in ministry. "Mark came to see me 3 weeks ago, and what he shared compels me to speak plainly about matters that are difficult but necessary." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Sarah felt the hostile stares intensify, expecting another condemnation. Mark was a troubled soul, carrying burdens that had grown too heavy to bear. He came seeking confession, redemption, and the courage to make amends for grievous sins. Father Rodriguez paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "Within the bounds of what I can ethically share, Mark confessed to years of deliberate fraud, manipulation, and financial abuse directed at multiple women across several states." The whispers stopped. Elena Wells's face went white. He spoke of a pattern of behavior where he would target successful, trusting women, gain their confidence and access to their finances, then systematically destroy their lives while making them appear unstable to friends and family. He named names. He provided details. He was haunted, he said, by the faces of the women whose lives he had ruined. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Several people turned to stare at her with new uncertainty. Mark specifically spoke of a woman named Sarah Mitchell. Father Rodriguez's eyes found hers across the crowded church. He described in painful detail how he had stolen her inheritance, embezzled from her workplace, and orchestrated her professional and social destruction. He called her the one who got away, not because she escaped his financial crimes, but because she fought back. Jason Wells shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous. My brother would never sit down, son." The priest's voice carried quiet authority. Mark left something for this moment. A final confession written in his own hand with instructions that it be read at his funeral. He held up the manila envelope. He wanted the truth spoken, consequences be damned. Father Rodriguez opened the envelope with deliberate care and began to read in Marcus's own words. "To everyone who mourns me today, I am not the man you believed me to be. I am a predator who has spent years destroying innocent women for financial gain. Sarah Mitchell, Rebecca Chen, Lisa Martinez, Amanda Foster, and Jessica Morrison, all of you deserved better than the evil I brought into your lives." The silence was absolute now. Jessica's mother gasped audibly. Elena Wells began to weep. "I stole Sarah's inheritance money, embezzled from her accounts, and spent months convincing everyone she was mentally unstable to cover my crimes. When she fought back, when she exposed my pattern to save Jessica Morrison, I told myself she was the villain, but the truth is that everything she revealed about me was accurate. Every accusation was deserved." Father Rodriguez paused, scanning the congregation's stunned faces. "My death is not Sarah's fault. It is the inevitable result of a life spent in deliberate evil. The weight of my crimes, not her pursuit of justice, drove me to that tree. If anything, she saved Jessica from the destruction I planned for her." The priest folded the letter carefully. Mark's final request was that his confession be made public, that his victims be exonerated, and that his assets, what remains of them, be used to compensate the women he wronged. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as the congregation's hostility transformed into shocked silence, then slowly into something else entirely. Elena Wells rose from her front pew, walked to where Sarah sat, and without a word embraced her. "I'm so sorry," Marcus's mother whispered. "We blamed the wrong person. You were trying to protect others from my son." The truth finally spoken had set them all free. The transformation in St. Matthew's Catholic Church was immediate and profound. Conversations erupted in hushed tones as mourners grappled with the revelation that their grief had been misdirected. Sarah found herself surrounded by people offering apologies, support, and stunned recognition of their misjudgment. Jessica Morrison approached with tears in her eyes. "I had no idea what he was planning to do to me. You saved my life." Her gratitude felt heavier than the earlier accusations, but as Sarah accepted condolences and vindication, a deeper sadness settled over her. Marcus was still dead. A human life had still been lost. The justice she'd sought had come wrapped in tragedy that would haunt everyone in that church. "Vindication doesn't feel the way I thought it would," she confided to Rebecca during their phone call that evening. "I wanted him stopped, held accountable. I never wanted him dead." "None of us did," Rebecca replied. "But his death wasn't your fault, Sarah. His own confession proves that." The legal aftermath moved swiftly. Marcus's confession, combined with Sarah's meticulously gathered evidence, led to her complete exoneration. The embezzlement charges disappeared. Her professional reputation was restored with apologies from her former firm and a substantial settlement that acknowledged their failure to properly investigate before termination. Marcus's estate, managed by a remorseful Alina Wells, was liquidated to provide restitution to his victims. Sarah received back her inheritance plus damages, but the money felt tainted by its origin story. More difficult was processing the moral complexity of her campaign. In therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Hendricks, Sarah wrestled with questions that had no clean answers. "You used his own tactics against him," Dr. Hendricks observed during one session. "Does that make you like him?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I saved Jessica, exposed his crimes, got justice for his victims. But I also enjoyed watching him suffer. I liked having that power over him." "What does that make me?" "Human," the therapist replied. "Someone who was deeply wounded and fought back with the tools available to you. The question now is what you do with this experience." Sarah found her answer 6 months later when she established the Wells Foundation, named with bitter irony for Marcus's alias. Using her restitution money and Alina Wells's guilty contributions, she created a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of financial abuse. The foundation provided legal aid, financial counseling, and support networks for people targeted by predators like Marcus. Rebecca became her first partner in the venture. Jessica Morrison joined as a volunteer advocate. Even some of Marcus's former colleagues, horrified by what they'd learned, offered their expertise pro bono. "We turn our trauma into purpose," Sarah explained during the foundation's first public presentation. "We make sure his victims know they're not alone, and we teach others to recognize the warning signs we missed." Standing before an audience of survivors and supporters, Sarah realized that revenge had been too small a goal. Justice required more than punishment. It required prevention, healing, and the transformation of pain into protection for others. Marcus's destruction had ultimately created something constructive, though the price paid for that creation would always weigh on her conscience. Some victories, Sarah had learned, leave scars on both the victor and the defeated. The true measure of justice wasn't whether Marcus had suffered for his crimes, but whether his future victims were spared from ever becoming victims at all.